welcome to the Blink Weekly Newsletter. This is Bianca Lager with your one-on-ones questions of the week, where I help leaders navigate through tricky leadership conversations and career moves. So this question of the week it's funny. I saw it submitted like weeks ago, and I kind of brushed it off and even bumped other ones up ahead of time because I just thought, this is so short, I don't even know how to answer this, but it's been in the back of my mind for a while, and there's so many scenarios that have come up even in my own life that I keep thinking about this question. So anyway, it's one line question. That's it. Usually I get a little bit more than this, but all it says is, how can I ask my boss for more support? Okay, and thank you, by the way. This is going to be really easy for me to put a title on this. I love that. But this is really interesting. And I think my first instincts are to say, well, we don't really know what kind of support you're looking for here, right? So are you talking about you're so overwhelmed with your work, and so, you don't have the bandwidth to complete it, and they're not being very helpful in helping you prioritize or helping you get your work done or meet deadlines or understand what the expectations are? There's so many factors here of lacking support that your boss could very much be lacking in, but it's really hard to say what it is that you're looking for. Another angle could be emotional support. My dog died, my dad died, and you didn't give a shit. That's a very real thing here. You're not very supportive of me. I told you I wanted that promotion. You didn't even vouch for me. You're not supporting my development, my growth, the things that I want to do. That's a whole other conversation, or at least topic to consider. And I will say this as a general line of thought, and probably, unpopular opinion, or just not something you want to hear, or potentially controversial. But I would say that it's not your job to make your boss a better boss. Okay. And so there are some bosses that are very open to feedback, and they have a very trusting and open kind of attitude towards their relationship building with you. There are some bosses who are in the power trip game, and they, at every given opportunity, whether they consciously know it or not, are just making it clear that they're not kind of your guide by the side. They're your disciplinarian. They're your better. They're, the person that is above you, and you just do kind of this little work, and I'm not really interested in kind of how that all works out. Just hit your goals and leave me alone. So there's so many different ways that your boss can fail you. And there's so many ways that you can sort of falsely get into the idea that it's your job to make them better. Now, I don't know that you have this problem, or that you feel this sense of responsibility. And I'm sure the sense of responsibility isn't just altruism. It's not you're let me help you be better. It's hey, my job kind of sucks because of you. And I think it's because you're not supporting me enough and helping me enough. So if I can influence and point out exactly what I'm lacking, you'll rise to the occasion. We can create a relationship that improves from there. I will say in general, there are ways that you can cope and manage and survive with a boss who isn't that great to you. And I'm going to offer you advice on how to do that versus trying to ask your boss for something that I think they probably won't ever do or aren't capable of delivering for you. And what I mean by that is that when you're feeling unsupported by a boss, it's a delicate conversation for you to have to go to them and say that, right? And you're asking me how do I ask them for more support? if you're not sure how to ask them, if there's so much trepidation that you're literally asking a stranger for advice to say, like, I don't know how to talk to this person, I'm going to assume the relationship there is not touchy necessarily, but you guys don't have like a high trust relationship to where this comes naturally. And that's your boss's fault. That's not your fault. Because this kind of communication style, if you're a little bit nervous talking to them, if you don't want to make them angry, if you're kind of like, I'm not sure, there's a dynamic going on there where there's not a whole lot of high trust between the two of you. Right? There's not a lot of psychological safety that you have in discussing things that really matter or impacting your day-to-day life. And so my advice isn't necessarily to give up, but I want you to understand and address that, like, there's only so much you're going to be able to do here. Okay. Temper your expectations, I guess, because, your boss doesn't necessarily think their job is to support you. Some bosses do, but most of them don't. And so they are maybe not the best person to help you get through the job, the things that you have to do. Okay. That is just totally like a qualification statement here. And I say this from personal experience. I actually really recently had a conversation with somebody who the dynamic between us was frankly toxic, and there was so much that was being unsaid and so much that was really just kind of guarded. And I'm just at the point in my life where I can't have business relationships with people like that. Or I shouldn't even say the people like that, where the dynamic between the two of us isn't a natural, open, and trusting one. So that would be great if we could all choose jobs and be really picky like that. But you're not always necessarily in that situation. You have to survive. So I would say this, like, I think that if you have very specific needs, for example, like, here's the business case for my workload being overwhelmed. I quite literally don't have enough hours in the day, and you can sort of prove the math there to them, then that's a really nice, tangible conversation to have, just like about scaling your team's operations, about performance management, about not having your goals or performance needs suffer because there's this very tangible roadblock in the way. And most importantly, when you present any kind of problem to your boss, ever, no matter what their communication style is, present the problem, present 3 solutions that you suggest, and one of which you highly, highly, highly recommend. This is the best way to approach any kind of situation with someone who is your leader or manager. They don't have time to create a solution for you, nor are they interested. And if you're sort of coming to them with a problem that's like, fix it, they're just not going to, and they're going to frankly find you annoying. But if you're coming to them and saying, hey, here's a really laid out business case or an issue that I have, here's the 3 things that I think we do best. Number one, my number one recommendation is this. I really would like your buy-in or your thoughts and opinions about this. Is any of this tangible as far as you can see? What can we make that's realistic? Am I far off base with these solutions? Any of those phrases are great phrases to have, because essentially what you turn your boss into in that scenario is the editor, right? They're not creating the solutions. They're not exhausted by yet another thing on their to-do list of fixing your problem. They are now, running through those scenarios. And again, the great bosses will talk with you about them, understand like, where's this coming from? What's up? Blah, 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 blah. But if it's the one that I think you kind of have, you're basically going to get like pushback probably on all your solutions, but potentially at least a discussion. So that's the kind of like 101 advice I would say there is kind of say, here's the problem. Here are 3 solutions. Here's the one that I, want to go with. What are your thoughts? Can we discuss this? Okay. Now, that might get you as far as you need to go. That might be exactly what you need, and to say, oh, okay, I'll approach it that way. But, if the issue really is like they're not communicating with you well enough, they are I don't know, in some way, like there is some sort of dynamic created between the two of you that is just not working. Now, there's a couple things you can do there. You can sort of take the same approach and try to be as clinical as possible with it. Say, and always put into I statements like, I'm having a tough time coming up with the tangible day-to-day tasks that are being asked of me based on this goal. Can you help me clarify this? Being really specific, and I mean extremely as specific as you can with exactly what is difficult. And even if these things are habits that happen over and over again, it's not helpful to kind of say, and you always do this. This is always the way we communicate about stuff. Because again, you're addressing a problem without coming up with a solution. So if you want to talk about the systematic issues of communication between the two of you, provide the solution of what you suggest of how it would work better. Now, again, this is a trickier one to address because you really want to be careful and not put your boss on his or hers, back them into a corner and make them feel defensive. You're not trying to attack necessarily who they are, but instead sort of address the experience that is being had by you in a really tangible way. Now, I mean, again, it's worth a shot. It definitely, I think, whenever you're extremely specific, extremely tangible, and you're providing solutions and saying, hey, this is what I recommend, and sort of just like sticking to the facts like this, then I think that's about as best as you can do. If you get nothing there, then what you've learned, the data that you've collected, is that, again, this is not the right person to help you. This is the problem. They're not being supported. They're not responsive to you. They're actually not engaging in any kind of productive conversation. There really isn't anything you can do about that. There just isn't. You can't change them. You can't influence their behavior or lecture them or cry or do anything that is going to really change how they approach being your boss. And so, I think that the way you have to kind of consider your survivability in this job is if you're overwhelmed, if it's something that's just emotionally taxing on you, you have to look at ways that you can just survive in advance, maintain the status quo, make the absolute best of it in the way that you are operating, I'm sorry. I'm going to say it once. I'm going to say it again. Go find another job. I know the job market's terrible and that's like not a real solution, but I think it also will help you see, and I certainly give you permission that like, there's only so much you can do here. Managing your boss, there's really great courses, especially like on LinkedIn Learning, about how to manage up and managing your manager. I mean, I'm giving some decent advice here, but there's much more that you can learn from that. I just suggest not completely driving yourself nuts with it because they will only ever change so much. So stick to the facts, be as tangible and specific as you can, always provide solutions. But absolutely, consider and recognize that, hi, it's them. They're the problem. It's them. Okay. A little Taylor Swift for you, sort of. All right. Thanks so much for joining the Blinkley Weekly newsletter 101s with Bianca Lager.